There was a study done about maybe, I think it was now 9 years ago, in a laboratory where biologists were accessing the human genome, and they discovered a gene that we have. It's called the worship gene. The interesting thing about this worship gene, two things actually. One thing is they discovered that it was inserted into the human genome about 200,000 years ago. Now, why is that significant? Well, that's significant because where's this book at? According to the ancient Sumerian tablets, right? According to the Sumerian tablets, uh, about 200,000 years ago is when mankind was genetically modified and forced to do the labor of the gods. That's why it's ironic. And the biologists and the scientists said it's 200,000 years ago, but we can't figure out how, because in order for this mutation to occur, it would take millions and millions of years of evolution. It looks like this was purposefully done. Well, yeah, it was purposefully done. They then turn the gene off. They learn how to turn the gene on and turn the gene off. When they turn the gene off, the person is no longer want to worship any outside source. They focus on self. They look, when they turn the gene on, the person seeks for exterior gratification, exterior deity, exterior help. This is a gene, in my opinion, that was inserted at the time that telomere chromosome number 2 was cut out and fused together, and the telomere caps were put on. That's in the Tower of Babel incident. At the same time, I believe that they also inserted the worship gene. And what better slave to have is a slave that doesn't know it's a slave. So when you go to Egypt, you find that the people that worked on these pyramids, because the pyramids were labored on by actual people. Now, the architectural guide and the floor plan came from higher above, came from Thoth, the Atlantean priest king, for example, at the Great Pyramid. He was the master architect of that structure. The people did the work under his tutelage and his training and using his technology. However, what you find when you go there is they weren't slaves. There were no slaves building any pyramids in Egypt, not one. That information that talks about people being slaves in Egypt inside this book is actually false. When you go to Egypt directly, like I've been a few times, you find out that not only were they working out of their own, want and need to appease the gods, but they were also getting paid, and they even had health care. Yeah, health care. Thousands of years ago, they had health care. And when you go to Egypt with me, you're going to go to these locations. You're going to see the temples and the buildings and the structures where the workers would check in to go to work. They worked out of only one thing: to please the gods. They were paid very little. They were taken care of if they became injured. But they didn't realize that they were slaves. When they had the days when you would have to give your atonement, and you would have to go make your sacrifice and bring in your, cut up your, slice the throat of your calf and bring in your first harvest, right? All those things. You're going to find out when you come to Egypt with me what that was for. That was for these people to get food and eat. They have the temples there, which we're going to visit the temples. And in these temples, they have these storehouses where when all these offerings would come, those offerings, because these people were not going to go out and hunt. They were not going to farm. They weren't going to go grow any crops. No, you bring me the food and the crops, and then I'm going to pretend to be your God, and I'm going to say, yeah, I bless you. And you go about your business. All right. You're going to find this out when you go to Egypt with me. And so they would store all this food in these storehouses that they had, these locked containers that they would have in the back in some of these temples. And it was purely for the gods to eat. Now, when I say gods, I do mean lowercase g. These are the Anunnaki people. They were just for them to have food. And they weren't going to go kill no cows. They weren't going to grow no cattle and all this kind of stuff. You just got pimped. And we're still getting pimped today the same exact way. You got the worship gene. You want to worship something on the outside. Everybody's focusing on the outside. Nobody's focusing on the inside. That's where the big problem arises. When you're looking external for external salvation, I guarantee you will never find it. You will think you found it. You will convince yourself that you found external salvation, but in true reality, you only tricked yourself. The only way to receive a salvation is to go within. and you don't need any exterior source to to forgive you and all this kind of stuff. You can forgive yourself. Matter of fact, until you forgive yourself, you're never going to be forgiven. Until you forgive your, I don't care if you hurt somebody, you did something to somebody, and then you apologize to them, and they say, "I forgive you." You're still not forgiven. Your conscience is still not fully satisfied until you actually look at your shadow face to face and say, "Man, I screwed this up bad. You know what? I apologize to them. I try to make everything right. And now all I can do is move forward. And you know what? I forgive me. I forgive myself. I have to learn from it. What can I learn from this? How can I become a better person from this experience? What can I glean from this mistake that I made?" And once you understand that, and once you accept that, and once you understand how to change from that, you've now rewritten your DNA. You've just been born again. Yeah, that's it. There's no magic sky daddy out there coming down to hit you with a wand and say, "Oh, all your sins are forgiven." Like I said last week, the biggest problem with this forgiven sin thing is it gives people a way to escape uh, taking, taking full ownership of their screw up.